All right, so my goal now is to take you through a trajectory of thinking that leads us to the algorithm. Now, remember, just like we've done with so many algorithms in this class, the goal is for the students to have the experience, repeated reasoning, looking for structure, making viable arguments, modeling with mathematics, all of those standards. And at the end of it, it's the student thinking that leads to the algorithm rather than the teacher just telling them and students mimicking. So here's the context. I love cowboy cookies. Google it if you don't know what that is. The recipe calls for a cup of flour. At my house, measuring cups are hard to find. And the day I wanted to bake cowboy cookies, I could only find a 1/3 cup measuring cup. So this is the drawer where I was looking for measuring cups. I don't know if you guys have drawers like this in your home, but just junk everywhere. And so I was looking because I have now kids and grandkids, and measuring cups end up outside in the sandbox. They end up in the bathtub, who knows where. So on this particular day, I needed 1 cup of flour. All I can find is the 1/3 cup measuring cup. So it says, describe how I can, as accurately as possible, measure 1 cup of flour using only the 1/3 measuring cup. And then, how would this, what mathematical operation would be at play? I mean, mathematically speaking, if I had to model this situation with mathematics, what mathematics would it be? Pause the video, think about this for a minute, and if you would, write out on a piece of paper, just for yourself, write out the mathematical sentence, operation, computation, if you will, that would be required to figure this out. Go ahead. All right, did you do it? Can you imagine this? 1/3 of a cup. Another third, that would be 2/3. And one more third, 3/3. Now, the spirit of this question says this: how many 1/3 scoops would I have to dip into the flour until I got to 1 cup? How many 1/3s does it take to make 1 cup? That's division, isn't it? Yeah, this is a division question, and the division is this: 1 cup is what's needed. I need to know how many 1/3s does it take to make one, and the answer is 3. 1/3 once, 1/3 again would be 2/3, and then 1/3 the third time, 3/3 would be 1. So 3 1/3s would be needed to make 3. Did you get it? All right, now we're going to continue this pattern. I'm going to ask you to pause the video and try stuff, and hopefully when we're done here, you'll see the thinking that will lead to an efficient algorithm. All right, here we go. Now suppose that the only measuring cup I could find is the 2/3 cup measuring cup. Remember that the recipe calls for a cup of flour. How can I, as accurately as possible, measure 1 cup of flour using only the 2/3 cup? And again, write out what this would look like in terms of a mathematical computation, in terms of a mathematical sentence. All right, go for it. Did you do it? All right, watch this. 2/3 of a cup, scoop. Now, what do I need? I don't need another full 2/3 because 2/3 and 2/3 would be 4/3. I don't need another full cup. I only need one more third. I only need a half of a scoop. So 1 scoop is 2/3 of a cup, and then a half of a scoop would be 1/3 of a cup. So I would, as accurately as I can, scoop a full scoop of flour and then a half of a scoop, and that would get me what I needed. And so how do I represent that mathematically? Well, first of all, the question is this: how many 2/3s does it take to make 1? Well, here's a little relationship I'd like you to see. Do you believe 2/3 of a cup, 2/3 cup measuring cup, is half as big as a 1/3? Sorry, I said that wrong. 2/3 of a cup is twice as big as a 1/3. And so, since the scoop is twice as big, I would need half as many of the 1/3s. Pause that for a minute, see if you got it. The 2/3 cup measuring cup in this context is twice as big as the 1/3 that I had in the previous case. Since the scoop is twice as big, I'm only going to need half as many. So look what I did here. I'm going to go back to what I said before. 1 cup of flour, how many 1/3s does it take? 1, 2, 3. It's going to take 3 1/3 to make 1. With a 2/3 cup, I'm going to need half as many. Twice as big of a scoop, half as many scoops. So I'm going to argue that 1 divided by 2/3 is going to be half as big as 1 divided by 1/3. Now, what was 1 divided by 1/3? 3. What's half of 3? 1 1/2. Did you see it? 1 full 2/3 cup, plunk. And then a half of a scoop, a half of a 2/3 would be 1/3. So 1 1/2. And isn't 1 1/2 half as big as the 3 that we got previously? Now you can flip this around as well and compare that original case, the 1 divided by 1/3. So now the 1/3 of a cup is half as big as the 2/3 of a cup. So you're going to need twice as many of those scoops. And so you can look at this either way. 1 divided by 2/3. How many 2/3 does it take to make 1? 1 1/2. 2 times 1 1/2 is 3. 1 divided by 1/3 is 3. So we can express this. We can model this situation with mathematics either way. Take some time to make sure that it's good. Are you ready? In general, suppose I have a measuring cup that can hold, hypothetically, 1/b cups of flour. See, it could be 1/2 half, could be 1/3 third, could be 1/4 fourth, a fourth of a cup. But I'm just saying, in general, it's a 1/b. And that the recipe still calls for 1 cup of flour. How many filled 1/b cups of flour, we'll call those scoops, how many scoops of 1/b cups will be needed to meet the recipe requirements? Pause the video, see if you can see it, reflect back on this if you need to. All right, go. All right, now, what does 1/b mean? Think about our fractional work before. 1/b means take a whole and cut it up into b equal parts. Each one of those parts is called a 1/b. And if you had b of them, you would have one whole. So if you scooped 1/b, another 1/b, and another 1/b, you would have to do that b times before you got to 1 cup. Look. How many 1/3? So the b is 3, right? 1/b, 1/3. How many 1/3 did it take? 3. So 1/3, how many 1/3 does it take to make 1? 3. 1/b. How many 1/b's does it take to make 1? B. So how do we express that mathematically? You can see it there. Mathematical symbols, the situation is saying that. How many 1/b's does it take to make 1? That's a division question. 1 divided by 1/b. And you would have to do that b times. So 1 divided by 1/b is b. Now that is an important result. We're going to pause there. Let that soak in before we move on.